Welcome. Now let's go ahead and see how can we do a full update of our data. So for that, again we have to go ahead and create some methods. So let me start by creating method here. So I would say update property. So we can update one property and then we will say property DTO. We will pass the new property which we want to update and also the property ID. We will pass property ID and we want to return back the updated property object. That will be the return type. Now if we go to our service layer, it will ask for adding the implementation. So just hover on it, we will add the implementation. So here what we will do is we will say first what we will do, we will first find out. So how do you update something? Let's look at the database. So this is our data. Let's say I want to update that this record, the complete record with full update, which means I will update this column, this column, this column, this column, everything I will update. That's full update of the whole row. So let's say I have to do this update. So first I need to get the ID of the row. Then I will fetch the row data and after that I will modify that data and then update it again. So let's do the first step. First we will fetch the row with the ID. Okay, so for that we will go back and here we will say repository property repository dot find by ID. This is the method we will use. And what is the ID? We already got. This is the property ID. Alright. So this is going to return us if we hover on this method or put, so you see it's returning optional of property entity. Optional of property entity. So let's capture that. So we'll say optional of property entity. So optional helps us. So I will say optional of optional entity. So optional helps us to do a nice null check. So I can now check if optional entity dot is present. So if there is any data inside it, only then we will go for update, otherwise not. So this helps in condition checking. So here I said, okay, if this data exists, then what we will do, we will bring out the information. So I will say property entity is equal to optional dot get. As soon as I do get, it is going to return me this entity. So optional is actually just a wrapper around us, our entity. It's a Java 8 feature, optional. Okay, now we got the property entity. So this property entity will hold all the data that already exists for a particular ID in the database. Now we need to override all the fields like the address, description, this and that all with our own information that we got. So we'll do property.set. All this we will say set title and we will override it with the new value that we got inside this dot get title. So in a way we will call the converter and converter will do it for us. So I will say property converter dot convert. Actually we don't even have to convert it, we just have to set the data. We don't need to even convert it, we need to just override the data of this property entity from the new values of property DTO. So if I go to the converter, here I have already this piece of code. I will just copy paste. So I will copy this and paste it here. So we have updated the database property entity information with our new values that we are getting from our in the method, and this will be called from our controller. And now what we will do, we will just call the property repository again and call the save method again and pass this updated entity. So what this will do now, so this made it, so here we got the data from the database. So data from database, and after that we are overriding its value with the one which we got from the front end. So now we are saving it, and then what we have to do, we have to basically return the updated entity, updated record. So I will say property entity, property DTO is equal to null, and I will just save it here. Before saving it, I will say equal to, in fact we don't need the updated value because that already exists here. We already have the data which we want to update. But if we really want that data to updated data that we want from this particular, then we can also do that by calling the property converter dot convert entity to DTO. So we can pass this. This will convert this DTO and we can return this DTO. Perfect. And now this is the method. Now we will call this method from here, from our controllers. So we will say public, for now let's say void update property, and now this will take two parameters. One is at the rate request body and property DTO, and then at the rate path variable long property ID, and we will have the at the rate put mapping here, put mapping, and we will say slash properties slash ID. What ID? This one, property ID. We'll paste it here. Now we will just have to call our repository from here. So let's call that property repository service, sorry, dot update property, and we have to pass this information. That's our DTO, comma property ID, and it is going to return us an updated property. So we can directly keep that updated property in this DTO itself, and then we are going to just copy paste this for now, or we can copy paste this, and we are going to return the response entity like this. Perfect. So now we have completed our flow for updating the property. Let's quickly test it out. Let's say I want to update the property XYZ. So let's see what data we have now. So this was the property apartment 3 we have, whose ID is 35. So let's update this. So I'm going to duplicate this now, right here, click here and duplicate this tab. So now we have this information in the body we have this. So now I will update this description to nice property, looks great, and then I will say Jane Doe, and then email also I will update. So just see, I'm updating more than one field. So Jane Doe at gmail.com, price is also going to get modified. Let's say 22YY111 country updated. I will mention this all, and I will not update this for now. So now we have to make this as a put. And what is the URL we have to form? Slash, and then we have to pass the property ID, that is 35 here. So if we go here, the property ID we have is 35. So 35 is the property ID and this is the object. So now this data will come here. DTO will hold this information. Let's restart our server, stop and start. Let me put it in debug mode. So whatever will come in the body will be part of the DTO, and whatever is coming here in the URL will be part of the path variable, this one. And then of course it will go to the service and from there it will go directly. So let's put a debugger here and let's see if the server started. Yes, server started. Clear the console. Let's hit this. So as soon as we hit, it's going to stay or stop here and there's a debugger. So let's check the property. So we have the ID as null, of course, because we are not passing a new one, and this is the value. And let's see the property ID. So this is 35. Let's go inside this method call, which is the service layer call. So we are here. So first thing we will do is try, it will find the object with property ID 35. So we'll go over. Okay, so it found it. So in the optional here we will have optional and we have this property entity. So we see that it got our the data from the database for ID 35. So we got exactly this record which is in the database. Perfect. So first, in order to update, first we need to find and get the one which is in the database. Then we go and do a null check. Then we found the entity and this holds the database data. Now we will override this data with the data that we are getting from our front end, which is in this property DTO. So we will override that. And we will override everything except the ID. So it is now setting the value. Now it will save this in the database. And now we will go back. We will go back and we will, let's say, resume it. And if we go to our response, we'll see that it has updated the information. See, updated. John Doe looks great here. And if we look into our database, this value should be modified now. Let's run it. Session expired. Connect again. Click here. Run. So we see the updated value. This is also updated. Updated. This is same. We did not modify. This is updated. This is same. We did not modify. So this is how we can do a full update. Full update using put mapping. So this is how we can do that. Okay. Thank you for watching this video. Let's continue in the next one.